So, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Traci Stein, as always. I'm so happy to be here with you. I've got such an interesting guest for us today. Her name is Laura Solages. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Laura, and then she'll tell you more about her own journey as a spirit artist, medium, and psychic, and so much more. But Laura Soulages is a bilingual medium and spirit artist. She is someone who really has a passion for helping people on their spiritual development journey, and she supports people in managing their grief. Laura is originally from Argentina. She spent the last 30 years living in the US. And, today she's going to talk about her story, her journey, about the life events that really shaped her path from artist to medium and psychic and so much more. She's really dedicated her life to guiding children and families and adults, again, through their spiritual development and grief coping journeys. She does offer mediumship and psychic readings in both English and Spanish. And we'll talk about that more towards the end of the episode about how you can learn more about and get in touch with Laura. I guess the last thing I'll mention is that she leads spiritual wellness retreats here in the United States, but also at Casa Andaluna in Colombia. She's working on a bilingual oracle card set called The Wheel of Seasons, and she has a book coming out about her journey, The School Born from Within. And without further ado, really welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hello, Traci. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's so great to be here with you. And I so appreciate your making the time.
Thank you for having me. And yes, this is fun. I love to be able to help in this journey of trying to understand what the spiritual work is about, and all the different works that we can do really to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give people a little background about how we met, just to kind of set the stage. So I am currently enrolled in the mediumship training, the 2-year training that you have done previously, but you've been a psychic and a medium all your life, really, pretty naturally. You are part of a group that meets regularly to do mediumship, but also spirit artistry or spirit portraiture. And so I was fortunate enough to be a sitter. And you and the other mediums came through not only with information from my loved ones in spirit, but beautiful portraits that really accurately depicted the likenesses and captured the personalities of, again, my loved ones in spirit. So that's really, I thought this is perfect for you to come on this show. And actually, I did talk about your work on my other podcast, Curious Explorers with Kathy Kelly. And I'll put a link to that episode as well in the show notes. And people can see more of your artwork there too. But I was thinking maybe the first thing I wanted to ask you is, talk a little bit about your journey, because it is a very compelling one. When you first knew that you were intuitive and kind of how you moved along the path that you're on today.
As you said, I think we are born with these abilities, psychic abilities. When I was a child, I used them for, playing games, or I had these premonitory dreams. I still have them. I didn't know, of course, that was, something that was paranormal. For me, it was fun just to go to sleep, and then I would just fly all over the neighborhood, and I would just see stuff, and then I also would have this premonitions, in the sense that I would see video clips of things that happened right after that same day. Sometimes, in a few days, or sometimes 10 minutes after I saw them. Like, for example, my uncle was driving me one time to take the bus, and I said, Uncle, we're not going to make it because you're going to have a flat tire. And then that's what happened. At that time, I felt bad because I thought I provoked it. I thought, it was my fault that I really, made the flat tire to happen. And then it took me all my life, really. I'm still trying to understand these abilities. And but at the time, I felt guilty about it, right? So the same thing happened when I said goodbye to my father. I was 9 years old. And that night, I opened the door again and I looked at him, and I knew somehow that that was the last time I was going to see him. And he passed unexpectedly. He was not sick or anything. He was 46 years old.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so then with my sister's passing, with my grandmother, I had an incredible experience too. And so...
But you knew it was coming. For your sister as well?
Right. And for my grandmother, it was, I was older, right, when she passed, and I actually was in this country. I was living in Texas at that time, and there were no cell phones, so I didn't have like a daily communication or anything like that. My grandmother was in Argentina, and I didn't know she was sick. I mean, she was old, right? She was 85 at the time, I think. That night, I was sleeping, and I woke up, and I have still a very vivid recollection of what I saw. And not only what I saw, I really was in Argentina while I was in Texas. It took me years to describe the whole experience to my aunt, her daughter, and because she's a scientist, and that was one of the things, in my family there are many scientists, so it was really hard for me to explain this paranormal experiences, let's say. But that day, that night, my grandmother is in her bed, my aunt is there, I see my sister, and I actually tell them, she's okay, she's ready to go, she's tired. So, and I still remember me talking to them while at the same time I'm in Texas sleeping. So that morning, they called me from the office. I was working at a summer camp in Texas, actually, in San Antonio. And they called me from the office, and they said, your brother is calling. And I'm like, this is strange, right? But it's not strange to me, but, he really never called the office. So when I answered, I said, I know why you're calling me. Grandmother passed. And he said, how do you know? He's also a scientist, by the way. He was living in Arizona, doing research, and now he lives in Oklahoma City, but always working for the university. And so just now, a few days ago, actually, I was able to tell him, that I do this work professionally now.
Oh, my goodness.
Right, because it's like, how can you explain this scientifically, right? I think the science is limited in that way, that they're trying to do now with more and more research,
yeah.
And I read about it, but it's something that I think it's really hard for the science to explain. So anyway, my aunt was open to the experience. Actually, she started crying when I'm telling her, and she confirmed everything that happened as I described to her. And actually, a year later, this is a few years ago, she invited me to see a medium in Argentina.
Oh, wow.
So, there is a transformation, I think, in general in people that are more open now.
Yeah.
To understand that these experiences are real, right? But so I will say all my life I had, this kind of experiences. I am now doing it professionally. I've been doing it for a few years. But for a long time I had a school, so I was running a school, and I kept, this work on the side, and I didn't make it very public because I was the director of a school, and as I mentioned, it's hard for people to understand this work.
There's so much in what you just said, Laura, and I want to just go back to a few things you said, because I think you also touch on themes that come up for intuitive people that are really hard to hold, especially when, because I think when you grow up psychic in an environment where everybody isn't talking about that or open to that or might be concerned about that, what happens is you wind up being a very young person who has to hold all that by yourself, kind of.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, I don't know how old you were when you were with your uncle and he was going to take you to the bus, and you said, we're not going to make it because you're going to have a flat
10,
tire.
12.
Yeah. And that's hard, because what happens is people so dismiss that. And I'm struck by your saying talking about the guilt and the anxiety about feeling like, well, did I cause that? I sensed that and I saw it. Did I cause that? Because I think that is more common than people really understand. The weight of knowing things before they happen and not necessarily being able to do something about it, whether it's knowing somebody's going to pass or knowing you're going to miss a bus or something else.
Yeah. Right. It is. I mean, I know now that I carried that weight for a long time. And so when I was, let's say 17, 18, I went to do yoga. I mean, now every teenager pretty much knows about yoga. But at that time I was 18 and the rest were like 50, 60. They were sent there by the doctor, to fix the back or something like that. And I'm meditating, right? And I met people from India. So I got into all of that because I was really trying, now I can see I was really trying to understand what was happening with me. And at the same time I loved it, right? I loved to meditate and to do all of that work. I got into astrology, tarot, anything that. Right now, what I can say is that to anyone that experiences these things, just not to deny them, to accept them, because once you really experience something, it's real. It's real to you, and it's something that we should really cherish because it can help so many people.
Absolutely. I also just want to note that, I hear you, that you sound like you're somebody who's been a seeker of, whether it's a deeper spiritual connection or a greater peace or all of those things. And I imagine that as you're holding like, oh, I might have a dream tonight and it might come true tomorrow. And, that's not something that all my friends are talking about at school. You're pursuing yoga and meditation. They feel good. They're great for us. But it also makes you that much more psychically attuned, I feel like. So it actually can increase those things that we're like, oh, what do I do with this in my family of scientists? So I was just kind of chuckling to myself as you said that because it's like, it's great. And, it further pulled you along your path, it sounds like.
Exactly, yes. And, when I was, I'm not doing so much now at this time, but I did for a few years a lot of psychic detective work.
Oh, wow.
I love to do remote viewing, for the habit that I have of doodling all the time and sketching and stuff. So I understood that with remote viewing, clearly, you can just transcend time.
Yes.
So it's like time doesn't exist, in a way, when we really connect to our center. Because either we can see people who passed, or we can see the future. So where is time and space in the case of my grandmother, really feeling my grandmother passing and being in her bedroom, So it's like the entire experience of my life click, and I'm like, okay, this is it. Even though I can read it in poems, T.S. Eliot, talking about that the time, it's in that center where the arts meet, where you produce your creative work, not only just in the arts, but actually doing mediumship, right? It's a creative work, I believe. So in that center, in that space where we reconnect to ourselves, space and time are not the way we understand them in the day-to-day life. And it's fascinating to me. So all of that, the philosophy and behind all that, I've been reading all my life to, Joseph Campbell and other people talking about that. And in trying to understand myself, I think I organically started helping people. First, many children, because I had a school, a preschool and elementary school, based on the arts. So I was able to help children and families for a long time, for over 30 years. And then I'm more focused on adults, not so much children.
At this time.
At this time, yes.
So you're having these intuitive experiences and a variety of them. You've done some training, or quite a lot of training, and the remote viewing, just for people who are newer to that term. The other podcast, I think more people are familiar with that, but it is a very structured style of psychic work that was developed by Stanford Research Institute and the U.S. Intelligence Services. And like you said, it is a way of very clearly tapping into information at any point in space or time, past, present, future, near or far. And I'm sure that did enhance your mediumship and vice versa.
Very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the drawing, the artistry, that skill is actually a huge asset for doing remote viewing as well, sketching what you see.
Right. So let's say I was meditating, right, all my life, sometimes more, sometimes every day, it changes. So I want to get into, that remote viewing and the whole spirit art mediumship, because I really stumbled upon it. I didn't know it existed. So from meditating and doing these long meditations, dream work, or shamanic journeys, some people call it, and anything like that, any kind of meditation really I love. But somebody said, well, what happened to you, after retelling my experience with that particular meditation that was probably like an hour long or something like that, somebody said, well, you're really connected to my aunt. What you're telling me, that is my aunt, and you're talking about the hair and what she did to my hair and all that. And I didn't really realize at that time that I was doing mediumship.
So that came during a meditation?
Right.
Okay.
So I was not familiar with mediumship
okay. I didn't realize that.
Because I had not been exposed to a mediumship experience, like formally, or going to see a medium or anything like that. So a friend told me, well, this is really, and it seems to be natural for you, so you really should develop, this farther. And so I started my journey with seeing different mentors from different countries, and while the mentors are talking, and as my teachers throughout my schooling time were talking, I would just be doodling, right? And so while they're talking, before going into practice, I would be doodling, and all of a sudden, faces started appearing on the page. And I'm like, okay. Then we get split into the practice room, and after doing my mediumship reading, I would say, and is this the uncle, showing the picture of the uncle, is this your uncle, or do you see any resemblance? And I was fascinated by people reacting to the drawing, because I'm like, what's going on here, right? I really was not familiar with the spirit art mediumship. And so the same friend who said, you should see Joe Shiel. And that's
Reverend
how
Joe
I started.
Shiel.
Right. So that's how, let's say 5 years ago, I started doing work with him to develop the spirit art mediumship more. And now we have 2 practice groups during the week. And, I'm still, as you mentioned before, I did the whole mentorship program. And so that's incredible, right? I still don't understand how it happens.
I feel like the universe kind of, starts to kind of pull you along a path. Sometimes whether or not you think you're ready for it.
Right.
I just want to let people know, again, who may not have heard some of the other episodes, Reverend Joe Shiel is considered honestly, by some of the best mediums out there to be one of the best evidential mediums around. And he does do training. He's done it for years. I think he might be retiring largely from his major training after this year, because he's got a life he probably wants to lead too, and has family and so forth. And he's been doing it for a long time. But evidential mediumship, just as an aside for people who maybe have just tuned in, is tuning into or receiving messages from loved ones in spirit. So you go see somebody for a mediumship reading, and that medium is open to communication from your loved ones in spirit. And evidential mediumship really does emphasize making sure to get details that are verifiable more than, it's not that your person in spirit loves you isn't an important message, but it's hard to verify, but that they, used to play chess and wear this green plaid shirt all the time. And, I don't know, I'm just making up weird details, but that coming through is much more, again, it's evidential.
Right.
And so you really have not only trained as an artist, but you have really trained as a psychic and as a medium and combined all of those things.
Right. And as you said, it's something that I wasn't looking for. I think the spirit world will use you, if that's the proper word to use at this time, in the skills that you have. So because I was already with a pen in my hand always, or the marker or the paints or whatever, somehow they got me into it, because that's another evidence, right? It's not only people can see the resemblance on the loved ones in spirit and the portrait. I mean, sometimes they are made only in 10 minutes, so it's really not a photograph. But you also get so much information through the act of drawing while you're reading. And because I always have that habit of, doing this doodling, for me, it's not difficult to be reading, doing the mediumship work and drawing at the same time. So that's a challenge some people have when they approach a spirit art mediumship, after being mediums and trying to develop that. Yeah. So it's something that it's tricky sometimes to be able to be talking while you're drawing.
So before the break, you were talking about your process, about what it is like to do spirit art. And we'll get into some of the examples that you were like, holy cow, because I love those. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so the first experience was really automatic drawing, and I still do that. Sometimes I use actually both hands to make sure I'm not interfering in any way, right, with my left side of the brain, let's say, with the rational part. So I like challenges, so I take two pieces of, whatever comes. But the first ones really were done automatically, and I was able to record with my left hand, because I was showing my husband, look what happened during this reading, these two pictures show up here. I mean, very, very simple sketches, but so that's one way, automatic drawing, like some people do automatic writing, and I have done too in the past, I have done poems and stuff like that automatically, and automatically in the sense that your mind is not interfering with whatever comes on the page, right? So that's one way. I can do that even before I meet the sitter, or sometimes I have done training work with just the name of the sitter and recording a video and then sending it to prove the evidence, right, with the sitter. Now, most of the time in the practice circles or with my clients, I draw as I'm starting the reading, and first I land the spirit, so I bring, let's say, 4 or 5 pieces of evidence without the drawing. I land the spirit. We both, the sitter and I, know who I'm talking about, that's important. And then I start the drawing. I start the drawing and I let my hand go on the paper. So that's one way, right? It depends on the experience I'm receiving from the spirit. So I trust the spirit, however they want to present themselves, and because sometimes who I see as a spirit is older than the one that comes through the page. And it's funny because when you're drawing them and you start putting the wrinkles, they would say, you would know they don't want the wrinkles. So it's just so funny because they tell you, if wait, you are missing something. I love my lips red, so you have to grab the red, quickly and make sure. So all of that comes through the drawing, and so I would say most of the times I do it that way. While I'm doing the reading, I'm drawing. Do I try sometimes to look at the spirit closer and see? Okay, I do, but not so much.
In your mind.
Right, or while I'm doing the reading, I know some spirit artists will say, okay, stay still so I can copy you. But I find that really hard to do, actually, to say, to do the reading and try to copy the person. So I pretty much let myself do it without much interference, I will say.
There's something you brought up that I think most people don't know. So I'm so glad you brought it up. Because, and again, I just want to explain the process of mediumship a little bit for people who maybe have not seen a medium, or at least maybe they have, but they don't know actually how it's happening for you. It doesn't matter really whether you have the name of somebody who agrees to be your sitter, but they're not there, or they're coming in 2 hours. Their spirits might present a little ahead of time, or maybe they're sitting across from you, the living person. And I'm just going to use an example. Maybe their grandmother comes through and something, so their grandmother is presenting in your consciousness. Could be you're seeing them, hearing them, feeling them, knowing something, but it's a living being, just not an embodied being. It is absolutely an exchange of information. But you totally made me laugh because grandma might have passed at 95 and looked like a little 95-year-old, but she may want you to draw her at the time in her life when she felt her best, which might be 40. And I think it's hilarious that, again, this is a real-time exchange. So the spirit could say, no, don't draw me looking like 95 and frail. I want you to draw me looking great in my favorite dress with my red lipstick or
Right. Or they tell you, no, my nose was smaller. You have to raise it. And right. It's incredible because then you confirm that with the sitter. Yes, she always wore red lipstick. So it's like,
so
at the time you're just listening to them, but then you confirm it with the sitter. That's what is extraordinary, right? That we can access that consciousness that you said. That's the other part I understood. Our body is really smaller. We think the soul is inside the body, but it's really the other way around. It's like there's so much knowledge out there that we can all access, the collective consciousness and this consciousness that brings so much information.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's to me is still fascinating, and I still don't understand exactly how it happens.
I don't know if anybody does fully.
Right. But I cannot deny something that is happening to me and, and somebody else is confirming, right? So I don't need the science to prove that, really, because I believe what's happening to me is, and I know it's real, it's happening for sure. Which, those were my doubts before. Did I provoke that? Is that something my imagination is creating? With this work we can confirm. And the sitter actually receives, I think in the process of grieving, receives a lot of help, because many times the spirit world, and I do believe they all come with good intentions, it's reassuring that they're okay, and they usually have a message that is right, spot on for the sitter. It's something that they need to hear from somebody, the uncle or the mother, whoever was a good guide in their lives, and even if not, if they were not really close to the sitter, they still come with a message that is many times is very helpful for the sitter.
If I may refer to the drawings that you did for me when I was the practice circle sitter a few months back, because you just touched on something important again that I think a lot of times people don't fully understand, and I think it might be useful for them to. There are different ways of mediums working. Sometimes mediums will try and go get the person the sitter wants to hear from, but the way you're trained to work, and many people are, is to say, I serve spirit. The sitter is coming to you, but let's see from your loved ones in spirit who will show up for you today, who has a message for you today. And sometimes that is somebody that you may not have been as close with in life, but now with their greater awareness, they want to say something to you. And when I was the sitter, one of the people you brought through was my father's father. And this, and your drawing was really, it really did capture him. And I'll show that in the video for this episode too. But I'm bringing it up because, I think I was in my 30s when my grandfather passed away, so a while ago. And we were never close. Even as a kid, there wasn't like a great connection. I don't think he was really terribly interested in us, and that's okay. Everybody's got a life to live and things to work out and a personality, and we all have our strengths and challenges. But younger me might have said, well, why is my father's father coming through? Because he wasn't really that, we weren't close. But he has come through several times now, including when you read for me, with very useful and important information. And I think that is reflective not only of us getting the messages we need, not necessarily the ones we think we want, but also their development on the other side. Is that your experience?
Right. Yes, because many times they come with an apology. And it feels like they are, even in the spirit world, there is some evolution, some growth. It's incredible, but it's like they did something they regret, right? And so the sitter, feels that there is something honest about it, right? Because how can we know if we're doing mediumship, right? And I don't know anything about the sitter to start with. I mean, I should see her many times. Most of the times, I don't know. I only know the name. So to bring a message of an apology when I don't even know how her life was, right? It just comes directly from there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't make sense to us with our rational mind, right? Us as mediums, but it makes so much sense to the sitter. Objects or pets come through, all the time. And in fact, I was going to say the remote view in the practice I've done, or the work I've done before that I'm not doing so much now, but I do it in mediumship. Because, for example, one time I was doing a reading, a gallery style reading in a group, and there were two people who could take this spirit. And I'm going into details, even the flowers, the bouquet of flowers she was making, and her place, and the hair, and everything, you name it. And I'm drawing at the same time. And then at one point, I'm like, okay, but, she is with one of you only. So let me go see these earrings, because the earrings were very important. The sitter had given her these earrings. So I did remote viewing to go and check all the details of the earrings. And so I get closer, and then I see that they are handmade, and I see the aquamarine stone in detail. So I describe and I tell them, and so then I have one sitter only who says those are the ones. The other one had given her different earrings, right? But it's just, you cannot really create this with imagination, right? It's there. You just have to open up yourself to access the information and just let it come through in different ways, because sometimes it's the smell also that will tell us, give us information, right? And 2 days ago, I think it was, this week, I'm drawing the portrait of a lady, a beautiful soul, and as I'm drawing her, she wants the earrings, right? So I put the earrings, and simple earrings, but then I almost finish her portrait, and then I go back to the earrings, and I hear, no, they had more than that. So I go around the center of the earring, and I add more, like, some, not exactly like a flower, but let's say they look like a flower. And then when they send me the picture, I look at the earrings she had, and of course they were not just round. They had this little thing around, exactly like she was telling me.
A little embellishment around it.
An embellishment, yes. And it's just, I mean, you cannot make this up.
No. And it's not that you're giving 100 details hoping like 5 or 6 are going to fit. You're giving just the details that come through that are clear from the spirit. So it's detail after detail after detail that you're either describing or showing through your art. That reminds me of something. So I saw a little bit of another interview you did, and I think in the video you sent me that we'll also post in this, with this video of this episode, you were drawing something that logically I think people would say, if you were just drawing something to draw someone, you wouldn't add. And you're drawing someone's face, and then I see your hand go over and make these kind of marks on one side of the face. Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I remember from that podcast actually that I mentioned this lady that I'm drawing, and as I'm finishing her portrait, I see one side, the left side, I think it was tilted, so it was not in proportion with the rest of the face, right? It was like smaller, and I'm like raising it and trying to make it again. And this is the rational mind, right? Because I was done with the reading. It doesn't look right? It was like, so.
The spirit is telling you to go back and fix the drawing.
No, that was my rational mind looking at the portrait. Okay. And I'm like, this side is really inclined. It doesn't look in proportion with the other side. It was like. And so I erased it and tried to fix it, and I can't. It goes back there, and I'm like, what's going on? So I still felt her presence, right? But I try again, erase it, and no, it goes like that. So when the sitter, because, I asked the sitter not to give me any feedback during the reading, only yes, no, maybe, right, if they can take the information. When she starts giving me feedback, she says, no, that is my, I don't know, great aunt, let's say. I don't remember the relationship. And she looks like that, and I tell her what was going on. And I say, I'm sorry, I couldn't really, I tried to fix this part of her face, but I couldn't. And she says, no, that's it. She had a surgery on that side of her face, and it really looked that way.
So like part of her face was indented.
Like indented, that's right. Yes. So that was evidence that I didn't bring through during the reading, but then during the feedback, she confirmed what happened with the drawing, right? So, yes, that was another experience. And I would say that I always was immersed in the arts, right? Drawing or painting. My parents both painted, and we danced, and, and the singing and the music and all of that. And I mentioned that because so people understand, maybe they understand better the process of doing art, creating a piece of art. I always loved and really enjoyed the experience of sitting in front of a blank piece of paper and not knowing what I was going to paint, and I still do it. So, and I connect myself, now I do it automatically, right? But it's really just trying to explain the process to my center, and let it flow on the page. And those paintings are usually the ones that feel more rewarding to me, and that you actually even get surprised of what happened here. Wow, look at this, right? I would say that is the same feeling that children have. I learn so much from the children, when they say, oh, look what I did, a little house, and they are surprised of themselves of doing that, making that little house. It's the same process, really. It's tap into the center where we create, and that's why for me also mediumship is fascinating, because when I sit to do a reading, I really don't have any idea what's going to happen. Like, drawing this face and not even able to correct it, or so that process of creating, piece of art or connecting to this consciousness or this spirit where you get inspired, right, in spirit.
Yeah.
It's really so healing for me and for people, I think for everybody. I do believe that we all need to create because it's very healing.
Really beautiful. And it's so true. And, I'm not surprised that your creativity dovetails so well with the intuitive work you do and vice versa. Like you're describing work that feels like you're channeling when it's you, another part of yourself. And when you're doing mediumship, literally the loved ones of the people who come to you. If it's okay, for people who are, again, newer to this whole world, you mentioned automatic writing before and automatic drawing. And I know that some people know what that is. Some people listening might not. But automatic writing, you're right-handed normally?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But you can use your non-dominant hand for you, that's your left hand, and just kind of doodle and allow, whether it's your higher self or your guides or somebody in spirit to come through with details for you to know, or you can sketch with either hand. And like what you were saying is you're getting the thinking, rational, logical part of your brain to kind of just step a little to the side so the information and the creativity can come through. Is that a
right.
an adequate description?
Right, yes. You leave that part of the brain, whatever you want to call it, the left part or, that rational part, to rest, which, we use all day long.
Yes.
And I do use, because running in school, I had to organize, and do all kinds of things using, but we forget that we are really not whole if we don't use the entire, our entire body and spirit and everything, right? So it's so good to have that part, rational part, put it aside. That was part also of my teaching in the schools, of allowing the kids to use both parts of the brain for their development, right, for holistic development, because it's so important. And I know for some people it's not easy because they haven't maybe done it so often,
right?
But it's really something that people can train themselves to do.
Well, it's wonderful. Laura, I know that you teach and you do workshops in addition to mediumship and psychic work and auragraphs. We should touch base a little bit on auragraphs and what they are, because I forgot to mention that. But then I want you to tell people about what you have coming up, and we'll talk about how people can reach you and learn when your oracle deck and your book are coming out, because that's really important. Maybe you'll come back on and we'll talk about that when they're out.
Okay.
So auragraphs.
So auragraphs are a little bit different in the sense that than mediumship, right? Than spirit portrait art, mediumship, because you are doing a psychic work. So when you are reading someone psychically, you are really reading the aura, the energy of the sitter. The sitter is the client, the person who comes to see you. So the aurograph, it's a picture, a doodle, a big doodle, let's say, with colors and stuff that shows up on the page in the same manner, right? You just don't use your rational mind, it just comes. At least that's how I do it. And it tells you so much about this sitter, not her loved ones in spirit, right? So that's the difference in between auragraphs and the drawings we make during a mediumship reading. In the drawings we make during mediumship reading, we are really bringing imprints of the spirits, and during the aurograph you are drawing the life journey of the sitter or something in particular, if they come with a question, and then I start drawing automatically too, and using different colors. The colors have meanings. I believe for any psychic they are different, so that you can interpret and then bring information for the sitter. So there are many tools to do psychic work, and auragraphs is one tool which I love because I can get to use my art supplies.
Oh my God, I love it. And if you have an example of one you want to send me, I will include it in the video. No pressure, but I would love to do, because it sounds like you can get all kinds of information, but again, visually depict it in a beautiful and creative way.
Right. Yes. It's really a pleasure to do this work and see, what gets revealed with all this work. And something important that our mentor teaches us all the time too is that we're not predicting the future in the way I told my uncle you're gonna have a flat tire, because we do all have a will. What I explain when I'm doing the psychic work is specifically is that it's something important for you to know, to put the energy into that, and to do some work if there is work to do, which that's always the case, if we want to develop it spiritually, there is always work to do.
So important.
Yeah.
Laura, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have, or that we didn't cover that we should have before we tell people how to find you?
I mean, I'm not sure I can talk about this forever. I'm sure there are many things that we can.
There's no pressure. There is no pressure at all.
Right. I mean, if you want, I can mention why I'm doing the Wheel of Seasons, which is the Oracle card set.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because it is done in the same manner that I do all the other work. But I first started working on it just to clarify, my mind with, I do tarot cards too, so, and in what is what, and the colors, and the north, and the south, and the east, and the west, and, and the seasons of life, really. So my deck is based on that, and I use watercolors, and for when I sit down to paint one of the cards, I really tune in that feeling that I name the card with. For example, in the major arcanas, I have one that is acceptance, right? One of them. So then I tune into that feeling and then I paint.
Beautiful.
So that's something else, that also people can do for themselves in addition to journaling and doing, automatic writing. They can just do that, think about what they want to manifest that day, let's say, and then just bring it out on a piece of paper with colors, even if they don't know how to draw, because that's not really the point. Anyone can do it, I believe. And so I always encourage people to tap into their creativity, because I think that's what helped me throughout my life, being able to keep that creativity open, and it can help many people.
Oh, I love it.
Then the event that is coming up is the Spring Equinox Retreat, and that is in New Jersey, in Tewksbury, New Jersey, which is where I live.
Okay.
It's a beautiful farm that it's called Celestial Acres Sanctuary.
Okay.
Where Rosanna has rescued over 100 animals.
Wow.
A variety of, from alpacas to pigs to chickens and bunnies to horses.
Wow.
And so in this particular retreat, she will be doing the horse experience, and then we will set up a fire pit. I will be doing readings there too, and I think it's a great cause, to support the rescue of animals.
Okay.
And so I do readings often there too, and because I love to support. I do love animals too, and the work she's doing, which is amazing. It's a non-for-profit organization, and so it's all good. Yeah.
So we'll put that in the show notes as well, and we'll put a link to your website, which is soul-ages.com, right?
Right.
Okay, so it's a play on your name. Which you were born with. You didn't choose that,
right.
Although it would be a great name to choose.
Right. Yes, in English it sounds Soulages, but its pronunciation is French, is Soulages.
Soulages. Beautiful. Laura, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad and so appreciative that you took the time out of your busy schedule to come on the show and talk about your spirit art and mediumship and psychic work and creative work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Traci, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I love your podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, I do.
This has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you enjoyed the episode, and I know you did, please remember to like, share, follow, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. And as always, until next time, be well.